Hello, and welcome to XML Stories by Publisher Speak, brought to you in collaboration with Markup UK. In this series, we bring to you a variety of case studies and stories about how XML and markup technologies have helped organizations publish their documents better. Publisher Speak is a community for the professionals of the publishing industry. We bring you the latest updates, discussions on the freshest ideas, technology innovations, customer solutions, and more. Our partner for this series is Markup UK. Markup UK is a non-profit organization of XML practitioners who are simply passionate about XML and markup technologies. I'm extremely delighted to welcome Gert of Markup UK for our series today. Gert is an independent consultant and he provides XML solutions to publishers across the world. In today's XML story, we are going to be talking about car manuals. Did you know that approximately 70 million cars are manufactured and sold each year? And every year, the manufacturers are coming out with a new model, a new variation. And every country has its own regulation. Imagine the complexity, and all of these details have to be captured in the car manuals. And not only that, they also have to be published in multiple languages. So, Gert, tell us about this problem that this particular publisher was running into producing these car manuals.
Well, I think the main issue when you're responsible for publishing car manuals for a larger brand is the scope. Brands tend to change their model every year. They have multiple models, and they even tend to, well, they have variants of models, and they tend to change, make either big changes or sometimes complete redesigns of a car model constantly. So they've got the 2021, the 20 brand, but somewhere in between, they've got like a V1 and a V2 or a hybrid. And there's also quite a bit of reuse between cars, like the navigation system or the audio system, that tends to be only have a few variants. So there's a lot of information, and these car brands sell their cars all over the world. So you need your manuals in 20, 30, maybe more languages. So there's for the publisher doing these manuals, it's like this continuous feeling of production mode. They always have a deadline, very sharp deadline for the next manual, only a few days away, sorry. And that's just going on week after week, the entire year. So I think the main issue is it's overwhelming, and it's the scope you need to manage.
So if I made sure that I understood the problem correctly, in this particular publisher had to do a lot of frequent updates, had to deal with multiple languages, all this within very quick turnaround times, but at the same time, they also had to reuse content between the various models. So would you say that was pretty much the main issue that they were dealing with? So what made this publisher come to you, or why did they specifically seek out an XML specialist for this particular project?
We met at a data conference, and while they came to me, this publisher just went to the conference to look for someone who could help them improve, and they already had an idea of well, they were reading brochures and attending data conferences, so they already had a feeling that XML might be a solution for them. So yes, they had some background that they understood that maybe this is a good chance or an opportunity for us to improve our processes, and then we met at a conference, and my office and their office is not that far apart, so we got in the conversation, and yeah, one thing led to another. It's a kind of interesting coffee chat you have at a conference, like, oh, we're looking for someone who can do this. Do you know someone? Yeah, well, I can do that. It's a bit like that. So there's always little coincidences.
Yeah, I think serendipity. You could say that, huh? That's kind of what happened over here.
Yeah.
Sure. So did the publisher have some specific expectations, or did they state to you what their objectives were? What were they trying to achieve here? Was it faster turnaround time? Was it reducing the cost? What exactly were the success criteria that they were primarily interested in?
They are a publisher, and their target has always been deliver an end product. The customer, the car manufacturer, tells them, give us this amount of books per year in different languages, different models. And they were very focused on the end product, a nicely formatted, printed manual per car. And the thing is, if that's your mindset, we want to have a nicely printed, nicely formatted manual in the car. You start using tools that are fit for that job, things like InDesign. And the issue they were having is then you have to go from your InDesign files into translation. All these translators use their translation management tools, and but then the file comes back and you need to start your formatting all over again, because you have, well, it must sound very familiar to publishers. You have this page that looks very nice. You made the layout of the table to fit exactly on the page, and then it comes back in a different language and it looks entirely different because that word is smaller in a different language and that word is larger, or you need to, some languages just require more words. So you need to do this formatting all over again. And then you go for the next language, and then the reviewer says, oh, in the French, there are some issues because this French reviewer was sharp and he saw that there were some issues in the language, in the actual manual. And then you have to go and revisit all the manuals which you thought were already done, but you swapped around some images, and then you start changing page 3, and then you have to go through the entire manual again because something simply changed because you're reformatting. And they understood that the way they were doing, they could no longer meet the fast turnaround criteria of the car manufacturer.
So what I'm hearing is that this publisher was trying to finalize the layout of the car manuals, make them look really nice and pretty, and at the same time was trying to also finalize the content and get all the updates in, and do both of this in very quick turnaround time. So it seems like there were two different problems that they were trying to solve all together and within very quick turnaround times. Now, you mentioned earlier that you met them at a DITA conference. So it seems obvious that DITA would be the natural choice here. But Gut, why DITA?
I'm not going to make a statement pro or uh, pro DITA per se, but there is a good fit for DITA as an XML format for technical publications. And there's one big advantage in using DITA here is it was easy to convince the publisher because they already had done some research and they already considered they wanted to go to DITA or at least start using XML. But the car manufacturer honestly didn't care at all. You sell a car, there's a book in the car, and the book needs to be there, it needs to be nice, but it's not something you want to make a long-term investment for. What my customer needed, what the publisher needed, was a solution fast, because they couldn't tell the car manufacturer, now we're going to redesign your system or the publication system. Let's not print books for a year. So we needed to do something in order to get some budgets from the car manufacturer to work on it, simply by saying we have some XML here, and this is how it will look like in the end. And DITA already has the DITA Open toolkit, which, if you have some DITA, already gives you some PDF directly. So it's pretty easy to tune a DITA system into something that looks closely like the car manufacturer manuals without too much effort.
Mm-hmm. So
having said that, it's a good Having said that, it is a good format for technical manuals.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. Can you talk to us a little bit about what was the current workflow that the publisher was using, and what was the new proposed solution that you had kind of come up with? You did mention that they were using InDesign earlier to produce these car manuals, and what was the technology that was being used for the new solution, the new proposed solution?
InDesign was used, and I think it's important to realize my customer was doing the manuals for about 30 languages. That was the entire European and near, I think, the European, the American, the entire EMEA market. So only part of the market of this car manufacturer, and they received some sort of an English manual in InDesign as the source, and that's what they do for all the. So the car manufacturer takes care of a very rough first version of each manual, but that needs serious rewording. That needs a serious quality boost of the images used, and so the workflow is make a English version with high quality images of this particular manual they receive. And that's something that needed to go fast. And the best way to do that was to reuse the InDesign and beef that up, both on the language, on the content part, on the image part, and on the layout. And that sort of, that was for the UK market, first manual done. And then it goes into translation. So the InDesign is sent for localization by various partners all over Europe, and then it comes back as a rough, unlayouted InDesign. That was the earlier workflow. That caused quite a bit of headaches because, well, the costs were translation memories did not always recognize parts in the InDesign, so everything needed. There were very few 100% matches on the InDesign files, so almost everything needed translation back again. And then the layouting part started. There was also some serious work on the images, translation of the images, because of course there's quite some text intermixed with the images. So they were spending a lot of time pulling out the text there, sending that to the localization offices. I think that's roughly the workflow they had. And there was a team of InDesign typesetters that were doing all that work. Yes, that's. I think that summarizes the workflow pretty much.
And what was in the new solution that you were proposing? What would have been the workflow? What was the workflow that you were proposing?
The new workflow wasn't very much different, except for the typesetting tool used, because we moved the typesetting from InDesign, not the typesetting, but the authoring, and we moved that from InDesign to Oxygen. So yeah, to Data XML, and I think that that's one of the two major challenges. Let's say that's quite a challenge. You have a set of people working on this text, which are good typesetters in InDesign, but also they're also understanding very well the matter of the car manuals. So there's two things. It's not like we're taking away the InDesign typesetters and we're moving them into being XML experts. You try to tweak your Oxygen environment in some way that it looks familiar to the typesetters. because they also have all this knowledge about what the end customer wants. They had all this contacts with the end customer, or through a information architect, they call it, their supervisor, who had all these contacts, and they pretty well know about how the end result needs to look like. But they have to work towards this end result in a different way. And yes, that took some training and that took some friction. Most friction, however, was with the information architect, because that person's role had always been to overview all the publications and tweak the layout. And this person wanted, if a representative from the end customer wanted a certain little thing fixed in a particular version, language version of the manual even, the information architect wanted to fix that in code. So they made it actually my task to fix all these little things. And what I wanted to do was teach them to be happy with not the 100 or the 105% quality, but with the 95, not spending hours on development. So keeping, I think this is a good point to say, like, if you go to an XML solution and you come from an InDesign background, you can make it look pretty nice, but you don't have the 100% pixel perfectness you have in an InDesign. So there is some trade-off to make, always. You can stuff in many hours in development, and you can minimize the, it's not quality you lose, but it looks a bit different. But some things are very hard to manage in an automated way. And what you want to avoid is go in and pretend as if you have manually checked each manual, because you don't. You get automated manuals.
Right.
Still high quality, but
so it's a trade-off, like you're saying. It's,
yes,
it's optimizing
always.
what you need over
yes.
what you get.
Yeah. So I don't want to be too negative that, but you do have, well, there is always some trade-off, and you can minimize that gap on the amount of control you lose, but you do lose control because you're automating stuff. But it also means that the automation is there. If you do your XML well, you get your print almost perfect in no time, because it's an automated process. And instead of working 2 or 3 days on a 100-page manual, or even more, it's a matter of hours.
So that's fascinating to hear. So like you're saying, changing the current workflow, making tweaks here and there, but trying to move them into more of an automated workflow. How long did the implementation process take for this particular project?
There's a couple of things. If you take the point of view of one single manual, you could say, okay, we have our model and there is data. We are using data with no specializations or anything. We tweak it a little bit, but so we didn't have to model anything. We managed to have the car manuals almost like they looked before, without changing the data model, which means it's just a matter of almost grabbing. That's essentially what we did, grabbing a piece of information, copy paste it from the InDesign, stuff it in Oxygen in a data file, or in data topics, sorry. And creating the data took us a couple of weeks to figure out, but we didn't have to model anything. We could just use the vanilla data topics. Changing the style sheets. So that's the automation to take this one manual and create a print quality PDF from it. That took a couple of weeks only. Let's say 3 months to really tune it. Yeah, not even. There is some iteration, there is some things we needed to test. The good thing was, once we had this single language data from one manual, It was easy to create all the others because we always had the choice of just reusing stuff, especially the yearly updates. We always started from the basis of the previous year, sorry, and then just adding content to that. So that went really well. The other thing is, and that took a little bit longer, is the management of all of that. Well, before everything were just InDesign files, and this person responsible for the Arabic version had all these InDesign files sitting in his or her environment. And we wanted a content management system for this. So we have installed, we have an enterprise data content management system in place now. And that was a bit more challenging because of all the stuff we wanted to do around that. Reusing variables, so that particular names were referred to by variables, reusing bits of data topics across languages, no, not across languages, but across years and across manuals. Things like that are challenging for a content management system. So the setup of the content management system took a bit longer and was a bigger investment. But before we had all of that, we were already having data manuals, and we were already processing them automatically, so we could show the end customer, like, here's your files, here's your manuals, here is what we're doing with your stuff.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So Gert, when you were talking about designing this particular solution, you did mention about retraining some of the existing people into learning XML so that they could work in Oxygen. But at the same time using their existing knowledge, because they obviously had the industry experience, they had the subject matter experience about car manuals. How was that whole training process? How did that go? And were there any friction? Were people open to learning XML and working with XML, or did you face any kind of challenges?
Actually, that went smoothly, in a sense that most of the team were rather willing for this change. It's no surprise that a change always causes friction. Some employees, some people in the staff simply don't want to change. They're very, very good at one trick and they're not open. And others see it as an opportunity. A substantial part of this team saw it as an opportunity. Okay, there's inside the publisher's company, there's enough work for the InDesign stuff they are doing. Things they know that will never be replaced by an XML solution. And here, so quite a few in the staff. Okay, it was some massaging work until they got that far. But it was interesting to see that a substantial part of the staff saw it as an opportunity to learn new things. And yes, as always happens, in InDesign it would have been easy. Yes, of course it would have. And in InDesign, I had the opportunity to. I know we need this part in bold. I would have known how to do that in InDesign. Yes, so it's a long process. We left the team with a new information architect. It was handled very well. So after training the team, they're enthusiastic. But yes, change always has there's always some friction with.
Absolutely, that's so true, isn't it? Change is always for the better, but change is always also something that people fight, and it's not easy. So yes.
Yes, it's a threat. It's a threat. They fear to lose their job.
Yeah.
It was obviously some yes. Yes, it
is.
But
so Gert, after you implemented this new workflow, can you talk to us about the specific benefits that the publisher saw after this whole new workflow was put in place?
Yeah, I think they come to an end result much faster, and of course there's an initial setup for each manual that doesn't make too much of a difference. Since, okay, they get the information, whether they have to lay out it in InDesign or they have to transform it or alter it in Oxygen for the first draft, that doesn't make much of a difference. But after that, when revision comes, it's no longer a matter of formatting and making nice layout over and over again, which took up to 2 weeks for a manual when there were a lot of revisions. And now they can sort of send a new revision in 1 to 2 days every time they get a when they get the feedback from the revision process. So that turnaround time per revision after the first revision has dramatically decreased.
That's quite amazing. From 2 weeks to just about 1 or 2 days for the revisions. I think that's quite a significant gain for the publisher, and just making sure that things go through a lot more smoother. I think that's a fascinating case and a story, XML story that you presented to us, Gert, a publisher working with car manuals with multiple languages, how they were able to streamline their workflow using XML, using a data format, and how they were able to streamline the workflow. I think that's great. A lot of takeaways from the story that you shared with us today. Thank you so much for sparing your time and talking to us about a successful XML story in publishing. Thank you, Gert.
Thank you for having me, and you're welcome.
Stay tuned to Publisher Speak for more XML stories. And until we meet next time, be happy.